you sizzling vegan sausages. How the hell are you? Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me for another installment of my Self-Love September series. As you can see by the title, this is going to be all about my journey with sexuality and also more broadly, how we can be self-accepting and self-loving when we are LGBTQIA, or when we are trying to figure out whether or not we fall under that umbrella, when we are having questions about sexuality, changes with sexuality, or just basically feeling like that is an area of concern for us. So this is going to be an important video for me on my channel in terms of addressing and sharing a part of my story that I think it is important for me to sort of put into my body of work that I have here on YouTube. It's the 23rd of September today. It is Bisexual Pride Day. It's Bisexual Visibility Day. So I thought, what better day than today to actually add to this channel some thoughts about my own journey being a bi woman, and also, like I said, let's talk more broadly about self-love in relation to this, because I know, of course, that it is a big struggle for a lot of people for various reasons. You know, it's to do with the way that society approaches it. It's to do with the way maybe certain members of your family have approached it when you have spoken about sexuality, when you have come out. You know, so there's definitely battles that we can have inside as well. We may not always feel that our sexuality matches up with other parts of our identity, and there can be various different reasons for that. So I just want to put forward what I hope will be some loving insight and some compassion for people that are struggling with self-love in relation to sexual identity and that particular journey. It is something that I can speak to, so let me go ahead and do exactly that. Oh, it's a skull filled with something fizzy that might kill me. How appropriate. As a person who came out as bisexual at the age of 14, I would like to first of all just deliver to you some thoughts that I've had about self-love relating to confusion about sexuality, struggles with sexuality, or finding that other people are not responding to your truth about sexuality in a way that shows compassion and that feels good and safe for you. Whatever the reasons are for it, I know that it's very common. I know that we have different experiences of feeling erased, feeling judged, feeling shamed, feeling rejected because of our sexual identities. So I want to put a few things across. First of all, please don't pressure yourself to put a label onto yourself, or to take a label away from yourself that you feel does help you and does define what is going on with you. I think there are lots of people that when they're having a dialogue with themselves about their sexual identity, they very much feel the need to get it on lock, figure out what it is, what is going on with me, what am I, what do I like, what do I want? And the pressure often is rooted in this feeling that you owe other people an understanding of your sexual identity. You need to be able to explain to people what it is that you are. And you actually don't. You actually don't owe anyone that. You don't owe anyone that. No one is going to fucking die. No one is going to drop dead right now, yeah, if you don't explain to them the intricacies of your sexual identity. I think a lot of people that are going through confusions about their sexuality, they have questions about it, or they're having a dialogue with themselves about it, they feel like they owe others a neat and tidy explanation of what they are and what they want. And actually, you don't owe anyone that. You do not owe anybody an understanding of what it is that you want, and you shouldn't need to boil down your experience or shave down your experience or very quickly figure out your experience so that you can let other people know, so they can place you in a box, place you in a category, and feel like they understand what you are and what you want, you know. And don't forget, you are not what you want. Your identity is not going to be primarily rooted in that. Your identity is rooted in many, many things. So I would just say, if you feel a pressure to put a label onto yourself right now, if you feel frustrated because you haven't quite gotten to the bottom of what is going on with you, or what is going on with you seems elusive or changeable and you can't really put words on it because it's too abstract, then that's okay. That is okay. It's not a race to a finish line of ultimate understanding, and it's certainly not something where you have to feel like you need to be in a hurry to label it, to, you know, get it figured out so that you can tell other people, you can announce it to them, you can make them feel like they have an inside track on what's happening with you in terms of your sexual identity. That's something that you can stop pressuring yourself to do. For some people, labels are incredibly empowering. For some people, finding a word that explains very clearly what is going on with somebody in any capacity. It doesn't even have to be to do with sexual identity, right? We're talking about just any sort of area where labels would define your experience with something. For some people, that is super empowering. I remember when I found out what my mental health diagnosis was, it was liberating and empowering for me. There's no doubt about it. But I've spoken to other people who said that their mental health diagnosis made them feel boxed in, disempowered, misunderstood, or very quickly judged by the professionals that were helping them, or by their family members and loved ones, because of the perception of the label or the stigma or whatever it might be. So I know that we have different experiences. For some people with sexual identity, they're going to find a label that really defines what it is that they go through, what it is that they feel, their sort of attraction that they experience, and it's going to feel liberating, it's going to feel empowered. But if that's not you, if labels are actually making you struggle, don't forget that our relationship with labels does have a spectrum of light and shadow. And maybe for you, labels are something that is actually more sticky and is actually disempowering. It feels like a trap. It feels like something that you have to commit to, even though you may not necessarily feel that you want to commit, and it might feel better for you not to label something. People will survive without a label, okay? Nobody is going to fucking drop dead if you do not deliver to them a label which clearly explains all the complex nuances of your sexual identity in one easy word. You know, no one's going to die if you don't provide that. So I think the first thing I want to say is, please don't feel that that is what it all needs to be leading towards, that there's a journey and the destination is, this is me, this is the word that defines me. And I think it's amazing that there are so many new words that are helping people to explain the nuances of what they go through that maybe there weren't words for before. I love that. I like to see language grow, you know. I'm really about the linguistic tree getting so many new branches. That's fine. But I do think also that with this celebration of words that we can utilize to explain things about us, and you know, sort of, we can cluster around certain words and say, oh wow, we can talk about these things now because we both identify with this word. I think that's so positive. But in the celebration of that growth of the words available to explain sexual identity, we need to make sure that we're not feeling pressured or making other people feel pressured to say, oh, I subscribe to this word, I assign this word to myself. If you are struggling with self-esteem and self-love in relation to sexual identity, it's a really good idea to find role models, and it can also be a really good idea to find community. I don't think those things are interchangeable. I don't think they have to link. If you don't want to find community, if that's not something that's really calling to you right now, that's okay. Whether that's online or in the physical realm, it might not be something you necessarily want to do. You might not want to discuss your sexuality with others. You might not feel the need to gather with others around it. But I do think finding role models can be useful, whether that's in books or films, whether it's characters that you can relate to, whether it's people in the public eye that you can relate to. You know, and I think this actually does go hand in hand with educating yourself on the history of the LGBTQIA plus movement. Actually looking at the history of it, the inception of it, the key things that happened, the things that moved stuff on, the important events that occurred. Like, that can be a really good way to find role models, to find pride, and to experience, damn it, I'm welling up already. Oh God. I knew this was going to happen. And there's no shame in it, but I just want to get the information out without blubbing. Okay, that can be a really good way to find pride. And for me, it led me to Brenda Howard, the mother of Pride, who actually coordinated the first Gay Pride March in 1970. Brenda Howard was bisexual, she was a sex-positive feminist, and she was also polyamorous. So for me, that's just three big hitters. It's like, oh wow, the mother of Pride was openly bi? Awesome. So, you know, you can feel like, even if obviously you don't need that many things in common with a person who's a role model naturally, you don't have to have that, but it was very meaningful for me. But you know, you can feel that connection and that feeling of like, I don't know, it gives you a warm feeling. It's also very difficult to read about the history of the movement, definitely. It can be difficult and it can be angering, but there's also a lot of joy in it and a lot of beauty in it as well. So I wanted to say that too. And on the topic of community, finding community, again, either online or in the physical realm, around sexual identity and issues relating to that, and the movement for equality in that. think about what you feel about it. You know, you might not want to at this point in your life. You might not feel like it. You might have connected with community and then found that you wanted to move away from community, and that's fine. Again, it's another thing about not being obligated. No one's obligated to be part of the pride movement. No one's obligated to talk about these things with other people who can relate to these things, but it might be something that you need, and it might be something that will help you with your self-esteem and with your sense of being comfortable with your identity and feeling like it's not wrong, feeling like it's okay. One part of learning about the history of the movement is listening to people's stories, and that's something that can also really help if you're struggling with self-esteem and self-acceptance in relation to your sexual identity, is listening to people's stories. And of course, this is again something that's very true in a lot of different ways with a lot of different things, you know. If you struggle with motherhood, then listening to stories about motherhood and struggles and, you know, that kind of thing will be helpful. If you struggle with your identity in any other context, or if you struggle with making art, you know, you go online and you tap in stories about that, articles about that, videos about that. Undoubtedly, it is usually very, very helpful to do that. So it's not just about this, but certainly in relation to this, listening to other people's stories, how they overcame their own difficulties, how they found acceptance, even if they haven't yet found acceptance. Sometimes just feeling that somebody empathizes with where you are at a difficult spot on your journey is super useful. So it might not always be that you want to hear from somebody who's come to this glorious place where you hope to go in the future. Sometimes that can be really inspiring and helpful, but sometimes it's just about listening to someone else who's going through difficulty with sexual identity and kind of just muddling through it, and they're not at the finish line yet. They don't really have that sense of self-acceptance, and sometimes it can be helpful to just understand that you're not alone in that as well. Another thing that I really wanted to get across in this video is that you can own your story of your sexual identity journey through artistic expression, through any kind of expression, you know. Put it into your art, put it into what you make, put it into how you decorate things, put it into how you dress if you want to, put it into how you journal, what you journal about, the things that you paint, the music that you make, you know. Express it through the instrument you're playing. Think about how you can own your story through what you create, and how that's a completely valid mode of expression. And however overt you want to be in that expression is up to you. Some people don't want to be super overt about it, in the sense that somebody could immediately look at what you've done and say, oh, that person is gay, or oh, that person is, you know, whatever that falls under the umbrella, the big umbrella. You know, so you might not want to be super overt about it, but oh my goddess, like, it feels so good to express just for yourself. Even, it doesn't have to be something you show anyone else. You could journal about this for hours on end and nobody else would ever see it, and it wouldn't be for public consumption. It wouldn't be for anybody else. It's just for you. But it does feel good to externalize what is internal, and sometimes you can answer your own questions or get a sense of your own inner peace when you deepen the inquiry through making some kind of art, through some kind of expression. Do not entertain conversations that are harmful. That's one thing that I would like to put across to anyone who is going on a journey with their sexual identity and feeling that self-love is sometimes hard, or self-acceptance is sometimes hard. Earlier, when I said you're not obligated to wrap it all up in a nice neat little bow for somebody else so they understand who you are, or what you are, or whatever it is that they feel they need to know to make them comfortable, or to be able to sort of like pin you in a certain way, you're not obligated, as I said, to deliver to them the explanation, or to have some sort of elevator pitch for your sexual identity. And in the same breath, you are not obligated to be open to conversations that make you feel unsafe. I think that's something that I really do want to put across. You do not have to have conversations or ongoing dialogues with somebody who keeps opening the dialogue up with you, but you feel like it doesn't really go anywhere good. It usually makes you feel unsafe. It usually leaves you questioning or disempowered or just uncomfortable with, you know, the way that the conversation ended or some of the things that were brought up. And maybe you feel like there is a power dynamic there where the other person seems to get what they want out of the conversation, but you end up feeling wretched. That's not fair. And you can absolutely say that you don't want to have those conversations. You don't have to RSVP to every conversation you're invited to. And when it comes to sexual identity, I think that's particularly important to note and to get used to believing. Some conversations are going to be conversations that you want to have, that you know that you should have with somebody, that are going to make you feel uncomfortable at times, right? So for instance, if you have a partner, and with your partner you've always maintained that this is your sexual identity, the sexual identity that they've always known you to have, And then you start to have a dialogue with them over the course of time about how you're deepening into your inquiry about your sexuality, you're leaning into questions, you're coming up against confusions, then yeah, sure, you're going to want to keep your partner in the loop about that. Your partner is going to want to know where you are with it. They're going to want to check in with you, and they're going to want to understand where you might be coming from and what might need to change potentially. So I think that's something where, of course, that's a conversation you're going to want to keep having, or maybe you don't want to have it, but you know it's part of what it is to have a relationship with someone. So I'm not saying shut down everything about sexual identity always if it makes you remotely uncomfortable. Of course, there are some conversations you're going to want to have, but you also can hold a very strict boundary when it comes to people expecting you to have conversations where you just feel queasy at the end and it's not good. One thing I would say is you can acknowledge the pain and the awkwardness and the confusion of the experience that you're going through with issues you might have with sexual identity, but I think also revel in the fun of it. Find the joy in it wherever you can. There is a lot of joy in having this exploration and in giving yourself the permission that you need to have this exploration. Don't forget that whenever you are in dialogue with yourself about your identity in any regard, you are in dialogue with yourself because you are wanting to come to a greater sense of authenticity and self-understanding and self-actualization. That is righteous. That is positive. That is a beautiful thing. And yeah, definitely there are weird, icky and sticky bits along the way, and that is uncomfortable, and it can be very sad. It can be very mournful, and we have to hold space for that. We have to allow for that. But there is a lot of excitement and revelry and you know, opening up to different parts of the community that are really fun and interesting, and like, I don't know, just references that you understand through having a shared sexual identity, parts of the rich LGBTQIA plus culture that you then become privy to and you start exploring, and that's just really fucking interesting and cool, and it can make you feel very accepted or very connected to yourself in ways that you didn't feel before you started exploring it. So don't forget about that as well. Don't forget about the revelry and the fun and the just like really lovely juicy bits of coming to a greater sense of who you are in your sexual identity like that. And that's something as well that I would say across the board with anything to do with any part of your identity. It can be fun and it can be delicious. There can be some nice bits to it as well. I would say let yourself have those nice bits, because obviously if you're going through the difficulty and the confusion and the pain and the icky and sticky bits, then you know you deserve that delicious, tasty stuff too. I want to talk about being out and proud as well, cupcakes, because I think that's something that I've thought about on and off through my time on this planet, exploring sexual identity. And I want to say, don't pressure yourself to be out and proud. Don't feel like that also needs to be the ultimate destination, and it unquestionably needs to be the ultimate destination. Some people have a lot less barriers to that than others, for one. And also, some people just personality wise are not really that out and proud about stuff in general. They are more reserved, you know? And no one can ask you to put your whole personality type down so you can pick up the baton of out and proudness and get in that, you know, relay race if you're usually one to sit on the sidelines and not get involved with that kind of thing. So I do think that, again, there's a pressure point there sometimes for people where they feel like, well, until I'm out and proud and shouting it from the rooftops and, you know, comfortable to walk around holding hands with my partner in any situation, or comfortable to, you know, come out to my family at the dinner table, wear a t-shirt that exposes my sexual identity, whatever, you know. If you're not there, then you're not there, right? That's got to be the destination. Not so at all. But what I will say, baby cakes, and this is something that I have thought about, it is okay for you to want to pursue a partner who has the same level of out and proudness as you, or somewhere thereabouts. I really think that that is okay. I don't think it's wrong to be reserved about your sexual identity, and I also don't think it's wrong to be very out and proud about your sexual identity. But I do think that sometimes there's a fundamental mismatch between someone who is very reserved and doesn't really want to address it in public or doesn't want people to know, and then someone who's very out and proud, who is maybe an activist, or maybe is comfortable bringing it up, you know, in the kitchen at parties, talking about it, or, you know, very comfortable with PDA with their same-sex partner or whatever it might be. Those two people, neither of them are wrong in the way that they approach their openness with sexual identity, but there may be a mismatch between them in terms of how much they could get on as partners. And I think that's okay. I think sometimes somebody can be very reserved about their sexual identity because they're going on a journey where they want to be more out and proud, and they want to be more open about it. And they might hook up with a partner, they might get together with a partner who can almost like help them on that journey and inspire them to be more out and proud. But I do not think that you have to be out and proud and saying it and exhibiting it to be self-accepting about it. I do think that some people are just more reserved. That's just some people's personality type. So maybe it's important to think about where you are on that spectrum. Do you feel like you are wanting to be on a journey to be more out and proud? Or do you feel like, you know what, I can be self-accepting without being out and proud? It's a conversation we have to have with ourselves, I think. And it's not just in terms of romantic partners or potential romantic partners where this consideration might come up. You know, it might also come up with groups of friends. You might find that you are not that compatible with a bunch of friends who are very much activists and very much part of the LGBTQI plus community, right? You might not find that you connect with them as much or can do lots of things with them, because you might not feel like that is the direction that you want to take things in. You might not necessarily want to be very much a face in the community, or very much, you know, out as an activist and posting things online and that kind of stuff. So I do think we can be friends with people who are more out and proud than us, or more involved in a community than we are. But sometimes it can be an obstacle or a barrier to getting closer. It depends. It really does depend on the situation. I just really wanted to make the point that you do not have to be wanting to land there. It's not a prerequisite of being self-accepting or being legitimately who you are in your sexual identity. It's not like the only way to legitimize yourself is to be, you know, a very out and proud person about it. I really think that there's more options than that. Okay, there's more than one way, chickens. My journey with exploring my sexual identity in a more in-depth way and a more sort of serious way happened when I was 14. It started when I was 14. So when I was 14, I came out as bisexual to my parents, my family, and my friends. That was after a couple of years of just gradually starting to realise more and more that I was attracted to girls my own age and older women as well. You know, I started to put together a lot of memories, piece together a lot of bits and pieces of my experience over time, and started to realise that ever since I was a child, I had been definitely interested in women in that kind of way, you know? So I think when you're a kid, you have little crushes on celebrities or movies that you watch or whatever. You know, you like, you're drawn to certain people, and it's a very sort of sweet, like naive crush that you have on them. And I had a massive crush on Oliver Reed as Bill Sikes in the musical Oliver. I thought he was the most perfect creature I'd ever seen. Oh my God. And I used to go very quiet when he was on the screen. My mum said, I knew you had a crush on Oliver Reed, because whenever he'd come on, you'd get very quiet and you'd like put your fucking, you know, chin on your hands like that and be like, and my mum would be like, are you serious? Like, Bill Sikes, honestly, it was concerning. Obviously she understood my attraction to Oliver Reed, like who doesn't? But you know, I would go very quiet and I'd be very like, you know, oh, it's him, he's so beautiful, right? But I realized as I sort of approached the age of 14 and I was thinking, am I bi? I remember thinking back and being like, well, I used to be the exact same way with Angelica Houston in Witches. As soon as she would come on, I'd be like, I just feel flushed and like, oh my God, how perfect is she in Witches before she takes her face off? Sorry about the spoiler, guys, if you haven't seen Witches. And if you haven't seen Witches, what the fuck are you doing? Stop this video right now and watch Witches. But yeah, like I was really like that with Angelica Houston. And also, I mean, The Sound of Music is an incredible musical, okay? But I'm gonna admit, the amount of times I wanted to watch it growing up, I think there was another reason. And I think that reason might have been Julie Andrews. I mean, oh my God, I was definitely in love with Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music and in Mary Poppins. And then when I got a bit older, I discovered Victor Victoria and like, what? So I realised, like, yeah, I've had crushes on women for as long as I can remember having crushes on men. I've also had crushes on women. So I came out. So that was how that ended up happening. I kind of had a coming out that happened with two very distinct energies to it. So my friends were all fine with it, and that's what I expected. When kids at school found out, like other kids at school, it was sometimes a little bit difficult. I mean, nobody was like super. There was one situation where I had to deal with a girl that was being extremely homophobic. And that was sort of when I was 15, I started dating my first girlfriend, who ended up being my girlfriend for 3 years, just 3.5 years, something like that. So yeah, that was when I was dating her, and I have had of course experiences of homophobia, but basically it was fine. My friends were all fine. But in terms of coming out to my parents, the first parent I came out to was my stepmother, and actually what happened was she came out back to me and said that she was bi as well. So I was like, oh, that was a really interesting turn of events. And then when I came out to my mum, that was a little bit more difficult. She was not unaccepting at first at all, but she was very much, let's say, reassured by the fact that I was only bi and not gay, and a little, nervous about it, more nervous about it because of her own shadows that she's done quite a great deal to work through. But essentially it wasn't an unpleasant experience in either direction. And then, as I said, I went on to have my first girlfriend when I was 15. Oh my god, she was just like, she put my heart in a blender and fully hit frappe, but she was bloody worth it. God. So from the age of 15 through, the latter half of my adolescence, it was really all characterised by going to gay pride marches, openly having a girlfriend who was a very out and proud lesbian, and drinking underage in gay pubs. And just being very much in the community. When I went to college at the age of 18 to do a foundation year in art, I became the LGB rep. There was no T at that stage. I am 35 years old, guys. Things have moved on. So yeah, I was the LGB rep for my college, and I organised a bunch of us going up to London for a protest against Section 28. During the protest, I wore a t-shirt that said "fuck Section 28" and I had a grade 1 buzz cut, and I felt supreme. I think a lot of you will be confused by what Section 28 is, and I'll leave some information down there for you. Unfortunately, despite my desire to really own this part of myself and to not hide away, I did experience a lot of biphobia and bi-erasure. It was always present, and it was always disappointing. I had experiences where friends of my girlfriend would warn her away from getting closer to me and getting into a serious relationship with me because I was bi, and only because I was bi. They really just did not trust that, and they were worried about her. My girlfriend also had some issues with my bisexuality. She knew from the get-go that I did not identify as a lesbian. I really believed I was bisexual, and that was where I felt like my sexual identity was. But she sometimes would get upset about it. When we've been together for over a year, that was when it started to get, she started to feel it more keenly, this idea that eventually I would leave her for a guy. And I would say to her, it's not like that. It's just an honesty around what I can be attracted to. I'm sure you're attracted to other women a lot of the time. There's beautiful women everywhere, but I don't think you're necessarily going to leave me because you absolutely have to be with this other woman. And it's no different with me. That's how I genuinely felt. But she, after a while, she was upset. She would question me and say, are you sure you're still attracted to men? We've been together for a while now, and I really feel like, maybe it would be time to check in with that. So there was an element of manipulation there, and a lack of acceptance on her part because of biphobia. And that was upsetting, and she would have a bad reaction when I would say, look, I am attracted to men too. I am nowhere near as interested in wanting to sleep with them or explore relationships with them, but I would be lying if I said that I didn't feel some measure of attraction towards men. It's just complicated. And I don't think about it that often, quite honestly. That's what I would say to her, but she had it playing on her mind, and it was because of biphobia. It was because of this horrible social campaign against bisexuals, this idea that we are greedy, that we are untrustworthy, that we are always we're like a pendulum and we have to swing the other way, and it's just a matter of time. These horrible, tired tropes are bullshit, and I really had a lot of difficulty contending with that. I've had situations where I've been in an LGBTQIA plus group, and the topic of my bisexuality has come up, and I've been openly mocked and derided for it. I am so happy that it seems as though in the last few years anyway, there's been a lot more discussion about biphobia and bi-erasure online, and lots of articles written, and lots of really thoughtful pieces of information circulating to help people to understand that this is not just, playful banter. It's not something that should be entertained, really. it can be really harmful. The thing about biphobia is that you do not really feel as though you belong in the world outside of the movement or the world inside the movement or the community. You don't belong anywhere. When I was at art college and I was the LGB rep, I didn't really feel like people wanted to be in there sometimes. Not all the time. There was, of course, a lot of acceptance as well. But, sometimes things would be said about bisexuals, or it was just a vibe that you would get. So there's a lot of distrust of bisexuals in the straight world as well, and a lot of just demeaning of it as a sexual identity. I've had, when it's come up in conversations or when it's come up online, I've had straight men tell me, oh yeah, but all girls are bisexual, aren't they? I mean, yeah, like all women are bisexual. I mean, it's really just this conflating of women who may sometimes like to kiss a woman at times or whatever, in a kind of fun way, but don't identify as being bi. It's conflating those women with women who can fall in love with other women and have deep, serious, actual romantic relationships with them. So it's very much this, again, it's bi erasure. Biphobia is the sort of the hostility, the animosity towards bisexuals and the engaging in empty, harmful tropes about them. And bi erasure is like, you don't see us represented, or when you do see us represented, it's only in terms of tropes. It's this idea, like certain guys have said to me, oh, all girls are bi anyway. That's ridiculous. Oh my goddess, I knew this was going to make me fucking feel hot and stressed. I've had situations in my life where I've become closer to a man and we've become friends, and it's been really lovely and I felt really good and positive about it. And then they have just come out with the most misogynistic shit. And it is so depressing and sad. It's like that, basically. In case you really can't put yourself in the headspace of a bisexual person being deeply disappointed by something, it's like that if you can put yourself there. Or if somebody just says something really crappy and reductive in any way where you are trying to be open and progressive and accepting, and they say something so fucking arse backwards and you're just like, really? I thought you were... Damn, I'm really going to have to assess the level of energy I put into this connection. Yeah, it's like that. And it has been really sad for me at times, honestly. I remember in my late teens and early 20s, even reading biphobic things in magazines, like agony aunt kind of things, where somebody will write in about their relationship with a bisexual or being attracted to a bisexual and not really knowing what to do or whatever. And the agony aunt in a magazine would be saying something biphobic about, you have to watch out, and these are the issues that could come up with bi people. And I'm there reading it, just being so disappointed, thinking, people print this shit? Of course they do, naturally they do, but sometimes it would be so hurtful. And over the course of time I've just thought, I can't fucking help who I am and what I am, and I'm not crying for the me that I am now, because I just wouldn't take that shit anymore. Yeah, sure, it still can be disappointing, and of course biphobia and bi erasure still totally exist, but I'm in a place now where I wouldn't entertain it, and for me it's just a bullshit filter. You say something like that, you entertain thoughts like that, that shows me the degree of closeness that we can have. It's not a judgment, it's a discernment, right? That person has work to do, and that person is willing to make comment on things that they clearly do not understand, and haven't put much thought into, and have just decided, blanket statement, tie you all with the same brush, whatever. So that just shows me what I need to know in some sense about the depth that I can go in a relationship with somebody else. I'm not crying for the me that I am now. I'm crying mostly for who I was then, trying to navigate through all of that and still love myself. And it felt so unfair for me, guys, because I really thought to myself, shit, I've been so honest. I have not only been honest enough to say I'm not straight, and I've dealt with my mother's, at certain times difficult response to that. She definitely had at times. She was on and off about it. She was fine with it, then she wasn't fine with it. She was hostile about it, and then she was accepting towards it because of the work she had to do in her life still. So I thought to myself, not only have I said I'm not straight, and I've dealt with the fallout within my own home with my mother, as it was at the time, and then also from wider society. But I've also dealt with the fallout with, you know, under the umbrella in that world, that there's problems with me being there too. So being bisexual, like, it's something that is just it's no easy road. It wasn't easy because I really just didn't feel fully at home anywhere community wise. Biphobia exists across the spectrum, and so you know, I felt to myself like, wow, I'm really being honest. I've really not succumbed to the pressure, even from my own girlfriend that I adored. I loved her so much. I really wanted to please her. I was such a people pleaser specific to her. It was very her oriented. I adored her. I worshipped the ground she walked on. If I could have said I was a lesbian, believe me, I fucking would have done, but it wouldn't have been authentic. It wasn't true. And I copped a lot of shit for that as well. And so it felt so unfair to just be like, wow, I'm really being honest in a way that's hard for me. And, you know, like, why in the end? What's the point? I sometimes used to feel that way when I felt really under attack. After I broke up with my first serious girlfriend, I dated other women. My mum only met one of those women who I started to get serious with, and I did take her back home to meet my mum. But actually there were other women in my life that I was romantically involved with, and I didn't share any of that with my mum. I really felt like she was still very much grappling with some of her own shadows. And as I said, sometimes hostility would come up, or passive aggression relating to my relationships with women. You know, I still feel like she's not 100% there. When I started dating my first serious boyfriend at the age of 20, my mum did refer to my bisexuality and my past with women as a phase on several occasions. I remember on one of those occasions my sister was present, and my sister was like, "Mum, she's bi, for fuck's sake. Like, we've known for some time. Let's really try and just get our heads around it and be okay with it, shall we?" So, you know, I understand my mother's upbringing, the messages that she was raised with. She knew herself that she had work to do, and she, you know, she's diligently done a lot of work with various things on herself. So you know, I think that was one of the things that sort of allowed my mother to say that it was a phase, or it made her feel more comfortable with it, was the fact that I was quite secretive about still dating women and having girlfriends, because it just got to the point where I felt like, you know what, that's not really safe. That's one of those, as I mentioned more towards the beginning of the video, one of those harmful conversations that I get to opt out of. I get to decide this isn't a conversation I want to be having. It's not healthy for me, you know? So there was that sort of happened as well. And I went on with experiencing messages, like I said, the stuff that in the magazines and the stuff that would happen in conversations. A lot of the tropes around bisexual people is that we're indecisive, we're unpredictable, we're greedy, we're not sure of ourselves, we're cheaters. These things are just absolutely not evidenced. We're all kinds of fucking things, you know? Some bi people cheat, some people don't. Some bi people are confused about stuff and maybe swing back and forth. Some people don't. I tend to feel and see, really, for me, that it's about being attracted to the personality. Of course, it's being attracted to certain traits gender-wise, but a lot of the time I just feel like it's so nice that I have the option to be potentially attracted to people of other genders. You know, it's just nice to have a bit more of that freedom. It's like if you speak 3 or 4 languages, you can get around more easily in the world. If someone can't speak English, maybe somebody will be speaking Spanish or Cantonese, and you can do it, you know? How great. It just makes things a touch easier. You can read more in more languages. Or that's how I feel about my sexuality. It's just like, oh, that's fortunate, you know. That's one of the positives of it. But I will say at the same time that there is nothing wrong with being bisexual and saying that you really feel sometimes as though you need to be romantic or sexual with a woman, or you feel the need to, after a while, be romantic or sexual with a man. As long as a bisexual person is owning that as their truth, and they are telling partners that that is how they tend to feel, and they're operating in a way that allows for that, and you know, that helps them to maintain that connection with themselves without judgment, and helps them to not be deceptive towards others because of how they feel in that way, that's fine, that's normal, that's healthy. You're allowed to say that you actually do feel that you require different things with different people, or at different times, or whatever. So that's just my journey. You know, I'm saying that I don't feel like I am uncertain because I want this and then I want that. But if you do feel that, it doesn't delegitimize you or make you into a bad person as long as you're honest about it and you operate in that honest way with yourself and hopefully also, yes, with partners as well. Dealing with bi erasure and biphobia over the years has definitely planted some shadows in me that I've had to work through. I think at a certain point I was very, very moralistic about cheating. I was very judgmental about cheating. You know, it's something that a lot of people have done, and there are various different reasons for it and different stories around it, and you know, a lot of people do get past a situation where they have cheated and thought, God, that wasn't what I want to do or ever do again. Let me work on that. Let me think about why I did that, right? And I know that can be people's journey and it can be people's story, but I used to be quite moralistic about it. Now, that's partly because of things that have happened with other people in my life whom I love that have been cheated on, and I've certainly been very, very savagely cheated on and betrayed long term in a relationship in my past. Hello, first girlfriend that I previously spoke of. That was you, wasn't it? Yes, it was. So yeah, that's happened to me. It's happened to others I love. But I had a particular kind of very strong moralistic tendency to judge when it came to cheating. And it was because, I think, part of it was because with biphobia, a big part of it is, oh, they cheat, they're not trustworthy, that you can't, there's something about them that is slippery, you know. And I think that I was always very proud of my sort of like, it was almost like, oh, A star plus plus plus, I've never cheated on anybody, and I would brandish that and I would use it to prop up how I felt about myself. But it was almost a way of saying, look at me, I'm polyamorous and I'm bisexual and I've never cheated on anyone. And you shouldn't let society do that to you. But you do, you know? When society has a really negative view, it's like, let's say if you're a teen mum, you're a single teen mum, you might feel the need to say, despite the fact that I was a single teenage mother, or I am a single teenage mother, I've done this, 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 and this. You shouldn't feel the need to justify yourself, but it's obvious why you would do. It's obvious why you would want to do that, because of this, just the negative image around it, and the feeling that you get that you're being put into that category. You're being put into that trope, that horrible, nasty, poisonous way of just like deciding who the fuck you are and why why certain things happen to you or whatever. So I definitely had to shadow work some things, and that's not the only thing, but that's for the benefit of the tape, that's an example that I'll give. I had to shadow work certain things that I was like, oh wow, it's the biphobia that I battled against that made me feel this way about certain things, and I'm so glad I shadow worked that stuff. I think because of the long road that I had with accepting my sexual identity and the activism that I've done in that regard and everything from young, you know, I think that it's particularly upsetting and frustrating when, like, my mother has called it a phase previously, a long time ago now, but that was upsetting. A friend of mine jokingly called me a has-been when I came out of my first serious relationship with a guy, and she realised I told her, you know, I'm getting into this relationship with a guy, so it was like 2 guys in a row, and she went, oh, you're a fucking has-been. And I'm telling you, she thought it was a bit of cheeky banter. No, I lost it. I was like really upset with her. And I think maybe in another situation at another time, possibly I wouldn't have done. It obviously touched a nerve in that moment. But I think also it's good that it touched a nerve, and I spoke with her about it and I said, hey, that's not okay. I don't like that. That's a boundary for me. There's a boundary there. I'm setting it right now. And she was like, I'm sorry, darling. It was totally just, I'm just joking. I'm so sorry. And I was like, it's fine. It's just, when you invalidate or take away from somebody a part of their identity that they really fought to accept, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. When you've been demeaned, mocked, mistrusted, felt like you've been pushed out of the community that you're supposed to be a part of, people asking you ridiculous questions that are just born out of ignorance and prejudice, and putting you on the spot, making out like you're some bloody fucking lab rat that they can ask these ridiculous questions to, instead of going and doing some meaningful research. They instead ask you these insensitive questions. All of that stuff has happened to me, guys. And so then to withstand all of that and to still be proud of who I am, for somebody then to try and just like wipe it away, like it isn't a part of my identity and it was never a part of my history, Yeah, that I feel some type of way about that, I must say. Darlings, before I wrap this video up, I want to talk a little bit about the word bisexual. There is definitely some dialogue about this word and the use of this word within the community at the moment, and has been for a while, and about the transference of the use of bisexual to pansexual, which is more inclusive of all genders. I want to talk about, why it is that a lot of bisexual people do choose to stick with the word bisexual. And it is because of the history of that word and how hard we have fought against bi erasure and biphobia. The word has a history, the word has legacy. The word is very important to me. It's a part of my roots. It's something I'm very emotionally attached to. There is a lot of dialogue in the bisexual community about the idea that perhaps the definition of bisexual could simply be changed to attraction to two or more genders. So that for those that don't feel as connected to the word pansexual, maybe that could be a possibility. I do also use the word pansexual. It does also describe me as well. But I think it's good that we can have bisexual as a word that may mean two or more genders. We can sort of like look at the definition and maybe update it a bit, or be open to the idea that when somebody says they're bi, it means two or more. And I think that doesn't discount or disqualify people for whom they do not feel themselves to be pansexual. That's also valid. That is also valid. But it also allows people like me who are, technically on paper, I'm pansexual. But I'm very strongly connected to the word bisexual. It allows people like me to continue to use it. It does require people who aren't bisexual to have an understanding of why we might hold on to that term, and how, it's very rarely going to be to do with prejudice or anything like that. It's more to do with the legacy, the history, the fight, and how that is still important. Of course, if it's not a more nuanced conversation, if it's just identity within the umbrella, a lot of people will use the word queer. I haven't personally adopted that for myself. It's not a word that I personally feel connected to for various reasons. So yeah, for me, bisexual will be the main word that I use. I do assign pansexual to myself too, but I wanted to explain that for anybody who wondered why I don't refer to myself as pan. It's not the word that I feel more closely connected to, but it certainly does describe me also. You might find that you do have shadow work to do now that you've come to the end of this video. You might realise that you do have judgments against others, you do have judgments against yourself. There is a bit of leftover stuff that needs to be worked through. There is some knotted, wounded tissue around certain things. Be gentle with yourself if you've recognized that. Take some time to write down some things that came up while you were watching this video, or that have been coming up for you lately. Do not use that list to practice self-punishment. Use it to practice self-love, baby cakes. Use it to recognize where there might need to be a little bit of loving attention, where you might need to deepen into inquiry. You can tell I've been watching some Tara Brach recently, because she always says loving attention and deepen into inquiry, and I love her phraseology. So yeah, ask yourself where that might need to happen. And I want to finally end with something that I wrote in my notes when I was thinking about this video and thinking about what I wanted to say. I wrote, if you're struggling with any confusions around sexual identity, don't push yourself to have the answers neatly lined up with explanations for everything. This is a journey with no time limit. It's not a race, and it's much more about you than it is about anyone else and how comfortable they feel. So please bring it back to self, give yourself a hug, be on your journey, be present on your journey. I wish you so much love and so much pride. I wish you pride today on Bisexual Pride Day. Yeah, I'd love to. I can't wait to read the fucking comments on this, darlings. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your stories. I'd love to hear about your challenges. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for sharing with me in this video and the thoughts that I've had. And yeah, much love and pride. Blessed be. Mwah.